In 1974, a man walked out of the jungle on a remote island in the Philippines. He was thin, sun-darkened, and dressed in the tattered remains of an Imperial Japanese Army uniform. In his hands, he carried a rifle, still oiled, still working, still loaded. He snapped to attention and saluted. For 29 years, Lieutenant Hiroo Onoda had been fighting the Second World War. No one had been able to convince him it was over. This is the story of the soldier who would not surrender. Hiroo Onoda was born in 1922. As a young man, he trained at the Nakano school, Japan's secret academy for intelligence and guerrilla warfare. He was taught to survive behind enemy lines, to blend in, to endure, and above all, never to give up and never to take his own life. In December 1944, he was sent to a small island called Lubang with a single mission: to sabotage the enemy, harass their landings, and hold out for as long as it took. Before he left, his commanding officer gave him an order that would define the rest of his life. "It may take 3 years," the major told him. "It may take 5, but whatever happens, we will come back for you. Until then, so long as you have one soldier, you are to keep fighting. Under no circumstances are you to give up your life voluntarily." Onoda took that order and made it the center of his world. Months later, in the summer of 1945, the war ended. Japan surrendered. But on Lubang, no one told Onoda. Or rather, they tried, and he did not believe them. American and Filipino forces had taken the island, and Onoda, with a handful of men, retreated into the mountains and the jungle. When leaflets fluttered down from the sky, announcing that the war was over and they could come home, Onoda studied them and decided they were a trick, enemy propaganda designed to flush him out. He had been trained to expect exactly this kind of deception, and so he did what he had been ordered to do. He kept fighting. He was not alone at first. 3 other soldiers stayed with him. Together they became a tiny guerrilla army of 4, living off the land, stealing rice and cattle from local farms, moving camp constantly, cleaning their weapons with palm oil to keep them from rusting in the humidity. They patched their uniforms with bark and scavenged cloth. They watched the seasons turn, year after year, waiting for the Japanese army that never came. One by one, the years took them. The first man, Akatsu, grew weary of the endless hiding. In 1949, he slipped away and eventually surrendered. To Onoda, this was not proof the war was over. It was desertion. The second man, Shimada, was shot and killed in a skirmish in 1954. That left only Onoda and a corporal named Kozuka. For 18 more years, the two of them held out together. 2 men against a world that kept insisting the war had ended. And it was a real war, with real casualties. Onoda and his men saw the island's farmers not as civilians, but as enemy collaborators. Over the years, their raids and skirmishes left around 30 islanders dead and many more wounded. They burned harvests they believed were feeding the enemy. To the people of Lubang, these were not ghosts or legends. They were a deadly, invisible threat that came out of the jungle at night. The authorities sent search party after search party, and again, they failed to bring Onoda in. Japan tried everything to reach him. They dropped letters from his own family. They played recordings of his brother's voice over loudspeakers. They left newspapers and photographs in the jungle for him to find. Onoda examined all of it with the trained eye of an intelligence officer and found a reason to reject every single piece. The newspapers, he decided, were clever fakes. The voices, imitations. The photographs, forgeries. In his mind, the fact that the enemy was trying so hard to make him surrender only proved how badly they wanted him gone. Every attempt to free him convinced him further that the war was still on. Then, in October 1972, after nearly 3 decades in the jungle, Kozuka was killed during a clash with a Filipino patrol. Onoda was alone. He was 50 years old. He had been hiding and fighting for 27 years, and now every man who had shared that ordeal was gone. Still, he did not stop. He buried his comrade, and he kept his post, exactly as he had been ordered to do. The war might have ended for Onoda only with his death, if not for a young man named Norio Suzuki. Suzuki was a Japanese adventurer, a college dropout wandering the world. He announced, half-jokingly, that he was going to find Lieutenant Onoda, a panda, and the abominable snowman, in that order. In February 1974, alone and unarmed, he walked into the jungle of Lubang, and astonishingly, he found him. The two men, separated by 30 years, sat and talked. Suzuki told him the war was over. Onoda listened, but he gave the same answer he had given for decades. He would not surrender until he received the order to do so from his commanding officer. So Suzuki went home to Japan and found Onoda's original commanding officer. Major Taniguchi was no longer a soldier. He had become a bookseller. But he agreed to help. In March 1974, Taniguchi flew to Lubang, put on his old uniform, and walked into the jungle. Face to face with the soldier he had left behind 3 decades earlier, he delivered the order Onoda had waited 29 years to hear. The war is over. All combat activity is to cease. Stand down. Onoda stood at attention and he wept. Then he unloaded his rifle and laid down his weapons. 500 rounds of ammunition, hand grenades, and the sword he had carried since 1944. He handed his sword to the President of the Philippines, who pardoned him for the lives lost during his long, private war. Onoda returned to a Japan he no longer recognized, a nation that felt alien to a man frozen in 1944. Eventually he moved to Brazil, became a cattle rancher, and later opened nature camps to teach children how to survive in the wild. He died in 2014 at the age of 91. Hiroo Onoda kept a promise for 29 years, alone in the dark, against all reason, obeying a single order long after the world that gave it had ceased to exist. He was a soldier who never lost his war. He simply never learned that it was already over. If you want more of these forgotten, extraordinary stories from history's edges, subscribe. Some of the most haunting battles were fought long after the guns fell silent.